One Florida Republican who is calling for the debate on gun laws to be brought to the House and Senate floors is Congressman Curbelo, and he joins me now. Congressman, thank you for joining us this morning. You are a Republican, and you are calling for more gun laws in this country. What bills specifically would you like to see come to the House floor?
That's right. Good morning from Miami, Sandra. Here in South Florida, we're still in mourning, and I imagine we will continue to do so for a long time because what happened here is unspeakable. It is very sad. And yes, a lot of people are calling for action, and we want this time to be different. We actually want meaningful action. Look, I'm a strong supporter of the Second Amendment. I think that we need to strengthen Second Amendment rights for responsible gun owners, but we clearly have to do more to make sure guns stay out of the hands of those who want to harm innocent people. So there's some very obvious steps that we can take. I'm supporting universal background check legislation to make sure every gun transfer is run through the NICS, the background check system. We simply cannot take risks anymore given the consequences that we've seen. I also support raising the minimum age. If an 18-year-old, a 19-year-old can't buy a handgun, oh, and by the way, they also can't buy a beer at a restaurant, why can they buy these powerful long guns that are capable of inflicting so much damage as we saw at Marjory Stoneman Douglas last week? So I think these are some common sense steps, and there's more. Stephanie Murphy out of the Orlando area has a bill to allow the CDC to research gun violence in the context of public health. I think that makes sense too.
What reaction are you getting from your Republican colleagues when you call for these changes to gun laws?
There's a growing interest. A lot of Republicans are saying yes. Some of these changes are really common sense. They're not going to limit gun rights for responsible gun owners, and there's an appetite to really work together and get something done. I'll tell you, a lot of Republicans are frustrated because after the Las Vegas shooting, there was broad consensus and support in Washington, D.C., bipartisan to ban bump stocks. I filed that legislation. Everyone thought it was a good idea, and then nothing happened.
Right, and in recent days, we've heard Trey Gowdy say he would be willing to support that, and he was reluctant to talk about any changes following the shooting in Las Vegas, and so we've seen him sort of change his tune on that. Let me tell you what the thinking is of American people, according to the latest ABC Washington Post poll. Specifically, first off, not a surprise, 77% say Congress is not doing enough to prevent these mass shootings, and 62% say the same of President Trump. But here's what's intriguing. 77% said that they think more effective mental health screening and treatment could have prevented the shooting. So for those who say changes to gun laws will not stop someone who just wants to inflict harm on others, they'll find some other way to do that. How are you and how are members of Congress addressing this concern that's clearly one of the American people, mental health?
Well, the American people are right. We have to take a holistic approach to this gun violence issue, and the guns aren't the only problem. They're just one of the elements of this challenge that we're facing as a society, and we do have to invest more in mental health. We have to strengthen the NICS, the background check system, so that those who do have mental health disorders are accurately reported to the NICS system and can't gain access to these types of weapons. We also should invest more, and my colleague from Florida, Ted Deutsch, has a bill to invest more in school security, federal grant program to help schools harden their structures and make it more difficult for would-be killers to hurt our children. So this is not only about guns, but we cannot ignore the gun issue. And by the way, none of these solutions will 100% guarantee that these tragedies are prevented in the future, but it may prevent some, and it could mitigate others. And if we can save lives, this will all be worthwhile. So I hope Republican leadership and the president get behind some simple solutions that can help make all Americans safer.
We have heard the president in recent days speak out on this, and the White House is saying that he is open to some changes, specifically more extensive background checks. Have you, Congressman, had a chance? You represent the congressional district south of Parkland, where the shooting played out last week. Have you had a chance to speak to the president?
We have reached out to the White House, not to the president specifically, but I think the president should trust his instincts on this issue. I remember after the Pulse Club shooting in Orlando just before the 2016 election, the president made some statements and even, I think, went and met with the NRA about sensible changes to our gun policies. I think it is his instinct to support some of these ideas, and today I invite him to do so because our country is demanding this, because there are a lot of young people in the state of Florida and throughout the country that are stepping up and speaking out, and they want to see action. And you know what? They're right.
It is really a tough issue, and Senator Marco Rubio makes that point, and he's basically saying that there's nothing that we could change today that would have prevented this attack, addressing the gun law debate that is happening in this country right now. Listen.
It is a tough issue because it is part of the reason why it is so hard to prevent these. Is because if someone decides that they are going to take it upon themselves to kill people, whether it's a political assassination of one person or the mass killing of many, if one person decides to do it and they're committed to that task, it is a very difficult thing to stop.
So, Congressman, what do you say to your Republican colleague in the Senate there, Marco Rubio?
I agree with him that it's a tough issue. I agree with him that there's no magical solution, panacea, that's going to solve this. But that doesn't mean that we can't take some common sense steps. After every one of these recent tragedies, I have filed legislation that would have made a difference. In the case of Pulse in Orlando, I filed legislation that would have prevented those who had been under an FBI investigation for ties to terrorism from having immediate access to guns. After the Las Vegas shooting, the bump stock ban, that would have at least mitigated that situation.
So there seems to be some real momentum here, Congressman. Do you think that we'll really see any change after this most recent mass shooting?
I think we will see some action. I had the chance to speak over the last few days with Speaker Ryan, with our Majority Whip, Steve Scalise, and I think that they understand that the American people and a lot of Republicans and obviously Democrats in Congress aren't willing to accept that this is the new normal, that every couple months we're going to wake up to news about a bunch of children being slaughtered at a school. So we need to take some action. We need to continue upholding the Second Amendment, protecting those who are doing the right thing by our gun laws, but inaction is just not an option this time.
Congressman Carlos Curbelo, I know your community and the communities just north of you are still reeling this morning. We thank you for coming on and sharing your views on all of this. Thank you.